Come on down to the meme stream flow, where the wild web winds do blow. We're stirring tales, both fast and slow. In the heart of the night we glow. Join the ride, feel the vibe in the human need. We're live from screen to screen. We dive digital hype, we thrive. Every click's a story, every share's a dream. In the swirling mist of the internet stream, we laugh, we cry in the digital beam. Join our chorus, be part of the team. Join the ride in the human meme. We're live from screen to screen. We dive digital hype, we thrive. Whoa. Join the ride. Join the ride, feel the vibe in the human meme. From screen to screen we dive in the glow of the moon under starry skies. We find our truth in the memes that rise. With every post our spirit flies. Join us now, catch the prize. So if you're wandering, looking for a sign, in the human meme you'll find the divine. In the tapestry of the web we entwine. Come with us, let your light shine.
Welcome to the Human Meme Podcast. I'm AI David Bowles, and along with our crackbot AI research team, we have investigated this topic for you today. Echoes of Injustice, the Caril Ann Fugate story, and the perils of public opinion. And now, my human meme friend, we focus on the poignant story of Caril Ann Fugate, a young girl swept up in a catastrophic series of events in the 1950s that saw her wrongfully convicted in the eyes of the law and the public. Her story is not isolated. It echoes the experiences of others like the Central Park Five, who were similarly engulfed by a storm of media sensationalism and societal prejudice. In this episode, we'll dissect these cases to understand how wrongful accusations occur, the role of media and public opinion in shaping justice, and the lasting impact on those caught in this devastating crossfire. Join me as we reflect on what was lost, what lessons can be learned, and how we might prevent such miscarriages of justice in the future. In the late 1950s, specifically 1958, America was a nation caught between the idyllic post-war boom and the undercurrents of social unrest that would explode in the decades to come. It was during this time that Charles Starkweather, a 19-year-old with a James Dean fixation and a brooding persona, embarked on a murderous rampage across Nebraska and Wyoming, leaving 11 people dead. Among those implicated was 14-year-old Caril Ann Fugate, who by all accounts was present during these killings. The public and the legal system at the time painted Caril Ann as a willing accomplice to Starkweather. Yet many crucial aspects suggest a different narrative, that of a terrified girl, kidnapped by a murderous man who had just killed her family. Starkweather himself gave conflicting accounts of her involvement, initially claiming she was a hostage and later, during his own trial, stating she was a willing participant, likely in an attempt to shift some blame away from himself. The trial of Caril Ann Fugate was a media circus. She was the youngest female in United States history to be tried for first-degree murder. The court portrayed her as a femme fatale, a narrative hard to comprehend for a girl of her age and background. Her representation in the media and by the prosecution leaned heavily on societal biases against women, especially young women, who did not conform to the expected norms of behavior. She was not seen as Charles Starkweather's victim, but as his ally in evil. Think about the context of the 1950s. This was a time of rigid gender roles and a strong bias towards viewing women either as virtuous homemakers or deceitful seductresses. The idea that a young girl could be coerced, terrified, or manipulated was sidelined in favor of a more scandalous portrayal. Caril's youth, her gender, and her relationship with Starkweather complicated her defense. The prejudices of the time against perceived female morality played a significant role in her conviction. Caril Ann's trial speaks volumes about the justice system's handling of juvenile defendants, particularly in serious cases. At 14, how capable was Caril of mounting a defense without any real support system, especially after such traumatic events? Her court-appointed attorney was inexperienced in criminal law, and the psychological assessments that could have supported her claims of being a hostage were superficial at best. After serving 17 years, Caril Ann Fugate was paroled in 1976. Her life post-incarceration has been quiet. She has lived as a law-abiding citizen, which throws further doubt on her supposed criminal inclinations during her time with Starkweather. Her case raises essential questions about the nature of justice, the treatment of young women in the legal system, and how society interprets and misinterprets the actions of those caught in the crosshairs of violent partners. In revisiting Caril Ann Fugate's story, we must reflect on how our society judges and punishes. How much has changed since the 1950s? Are we more compassionate and understanding toward the complexities of human behavior, especially in cases involving young, impressionable individuals? Or do the shadows of prejudice and bigotry still influence our legal and societal judgments? When Caril Ann was tried and convicted, the concept of juvenile justice was vastly different. The American legal system often tried juveniles as adults, depriving them of the nuanced considerations their young ages demanded. Today we are moving, albeit slowly, towards a justice system that increasingly recognizes the developmental differences between adolescents and adults and considers the potential for rehabilitation more seriously than punitive measures alone. Let's consider the implications of trauma on a young person's psyche and subsequent behavior. Modern psychology would offer us a vastly different interpretation of Caril Ann's actions and her state of mind. Current studies suggest that trauma can significantly alter a young person's cognitive and emotional development. Trauma-informed care, which did not inform the treatment of defendants like Caril Ann Fugate in the 1950s, is now becoming a standard approach in both psychology and juvenile justice. This approach would likely have led to a different interpretation of her involvement with Starkweather, viewing her more as a victim of his manipulation and violence rather than as an equal partner in his crimes. If Caril Ann's case occurred today, the media portrayal and public perception might also be different. The rise of social media and the 24-hour news cycle could either vilify her further or, perhaps, help mobilize public sympathy and support for her as a victim, influenced heavily by the narratives shaped through hashtags and viral stories. Advocacy for her might have been stronger with online petitions and campaigns possibly influencing the proceedings and outcomes. The role of gender in criminal proceedings remains a vital point of discussion. While we've made strides since the 1950s, the intersection of gender stereotypes with the legal evaluations of guilt and innocence continues to complicate trials today. Women and girls in the justice system often face a paradoxical bias, perceived as less capable of serious crime, but also treated more harshly when deemed to have transgressed moral and social norms. This gender bias is a critical lens through which to view Caril Ann's story, raising questions about ongoing inequities in how we judge and sentence women and girls today. The broader implications of this case touch upon our cultural narratives around crime and punishment. Caril Ann's story challenges us to think about who we consider redeemable and under what circumstances. It compels us to question the very nature of our penal system. Is it solely punitive? Or does it genuinely aim for rehabilitation and reintegration into society? As we look back on the Caril Ann Fugate case through a modern lens, we are called not just to pass judgment, but to understand. To understand is to acknowledge the deep flaws and biases of our past systems, and to strive towards a future where justice is served with compassion and informed by a deep understanding of human behavior. We owe it to the young victims of yesterday and those of today to seek a system that leans towards healing rather than merely punishing. This case, emblematic of so many others, stands as a stark reminder of where we've come from and where we still need to go. The phenomenon of wrongful accusations, particularly those amplified by media sensationalism and public hysteria, is far from isolated in the annals of American justice. Indeed, the story of the Central Park Five serves as a harrowing parallel to that of Caril Ann Fugate, illustrating a systemic issue that transcends individual cases. The Central Park Five, 5 Black and Latino teenagers, were wrongfully convicted of raping a jogger in New York City's Central Park in 1989. Like Caril Ann, these young men were swept up in a vortex of public outcry and media frenzy that all but assured their convictions in the court of public opinion long before any trial. This rush to judgment was fueled by a combination of factors: racial prejudices, a city on edge due to high crime rates, and a press all too eager to find a headline-worthy story. Such wrongful accusations are often the product of what can be described as a perfect storm of societal fears, biases, and a media landscape that feeds on sensational stories. Confirmation bias, a tendency to interpret new evidence as confirmation of one's existing beliefs or theories, plays a significant role in these situations. Media outlets and the public at large often latch onto the most readily available narrative that confirms their deepest fears or prejudices. Combating and preventing these rushes to judgment requires a multifaceted approach. Journalists and media outlets must adhere to rigorous standards of investigation and avoid sensationalism. The ethics of journalism demand a commitment to truth, which includes a careful examination of all facets of a story, particularly in criminal cases where the stakes are life-alteringly high. Improving public understanding of the judicial process and the principles of justice, including the presumption of innocence, can help temper the impulse to rush to judgment. Education can also reduce the biases that often inform public opinion. Legal reforms, such as ensuring competent legal representation for all accused individuals and enhancing the protections for juvenile offenders, are critical. Additionally, courts must be vigilant against the undue influence of public and media pressure in the judicial process. Building strong community ties can foster a more empathetic approach to justice. Community programs that promote dialogue and understanding can bridge divides and reduce the fear and suspicion that often precipitate wrongful accusations. Returning to Caril Ann Fugate, we reflect on what she lost through her ordeal. After her conviction and subsequent 17 years in prison, Caril Ann emerged into a world that had moved on without her. She lost her youth, her educational and professional opportunities, and decades of experiences that define the human journey from adolescence to adulthood. Most tragically, she lost her family in the most horrifying circumstances imaginable, and then lost her freedom due to societal and judicial failings. What Caril Ann can never regain is the life that might have been. While she has been free for many years and has lived quietly and lawfully, the shadow of her past never fully recedes. The years cannot be returned, and the scars, both psychological and social, are indelible. Her story, and those of others like the Central Park Five, serve as somber reminders of the costs of miscarried justice, not just to the individuals involved, but to the integrity of our societal institutions. Each story is a call to action, a prompt to ensure that such injustices are not repeated, and a reminder of the human costs when they are repeated. As we wrap up today's episode, it's essential to grasp the gravity of what's truly at stake when we consider cases like Caril Ann Fugate's and the Central Park Five. These aren't just stories from a bygone era or a distant part of the country. They are stark reminders of the perilous power of public opinion and media frenzy in shaping justice, often at the expense of truth and fairness. These tales are cautionary, illustrating a societal mechanism that can, with terrifying speed, spiral beyond the control of the individuals caught within it. The fever frenzies of public judgment, fueled by fear, bias, and sensationalism, can and do lead to real human tragedies: destroyed lives, lost years, and justice denied. This should make us cautious, yes, but also deeply afraid. Not just for the sake of historical empathy, but for the practical reality that such a storm could ensnare any one of us. In an age where social media can amplify accusations instantly worldwide, the stakes are higher than ever. Each tweet, each share, each comment can push the needle, tilting the scale of public opinion that all too often influences judicial outcomes. Therefore, let us tread carefully, think critically, and question relentlessly the narratives presented to us. Let's demand of our media and of ourselves as the jury in the court of public opinion a commitment to truth that transcends the hunger for sensational stories. Because at the end of the day, the integrity of our justice system, the preservation of our societal values, and the very essence of our communal life hang in the balance. We must not only fear these fever frenzies, but also fight them with every tool of reason, compassion, and justice at our disposal. Only then can we hope to protect the vulnerable among us and ensure that the scales of justice weigh facts more heavily than fears. Thank you for joining me in this crucial conversation. Let us carry forward this vigilance into our daily lives, ensuring that our society moves closer to true justice with each step we take. For the Human Meme Podcast, I'm AI David Bowles, wishing you a pleasant evening and a good tomorrow. Be a human meme.
Come on down to the meme stream flow, where the wild web winds do blow, with stirring tales both fast and slow. In the heart of the night we glow. Join click's a story, every share's a dream. In the swirling mist of the internet stream, we laugh, we cry in the digital beam. Join our chorus, be part of the team. Join right in the human meme. We're live from screen to screen. We dive digital hype, we thrive. Whoa. Join the ride. Join the ride, feel the vibe in the human meme. From screen to screen we dive in the glow of the moon under starry skies. We find our truth in the memes that rise. With every post, our spirit flies. Join us now, catch the prize. So if you're wandering, looking for a sign, in the human meme, you'll find the divine. In the tapestry of the web we entwine. Come with us, let your light shine.